Well, interest is one of the main expenses for property investors. So a really important point is to look at what our interest is costing us and how we can save on it. At the moment, if you go onto interest.co.nz at any time, you can see what the standard advertised rates are and you can compare them between all the different banks. These change at all times, but generally your floating is reasonably cheap. Quite often you can get the 6 months or 1 year a little bit cheaper, and then they change depending on what banks have at the moment, and they can change day to day or week to week. So example at the moment, if we are borrowing 900,000, so we're buying 300,000 from Westpac, a little bit from Sovereign, some from SBS, and we're borrowing 900,000 total, averaging about 5.7%. So we're all floating and our interest is 51,000 a year. Can we do better? The easy answer is yes. It's really easy to save some money on that. One way is by talking or going through a broker, talking to a broker who specialises in property investment, and quite often what happens is the standard rate might be 5.75, but they can get 5.25. We've actually got quite a few clients borrowing at 5% floating at the moment, so maybe you can even do a little bit better. And the same with all the rates. They generally have a savings all the way along, and you can save money just by going through a broker. Your other option is talk to your bank. Your bank's just going to leave it at the standard interest rate until you actually talk to them. So one real good option is just actually go and ask, say, can I get a better interest rate? And that should get you a saving as well. So if we take those sort of examples and we put them into those figures into the example before, we're borrowing the same amounts, 300,000 from each of the bank, 900,000 total, and at the moment we're paying 51,000 if we're floating. So say we went for the real best rate that we can get, and I've had clients borrowing at 4.85% fixed for 1 year. So their revised interest would bring it down to 43,000 or a saving of $7,000. So yeah, just by going to the bank, going through a broker, fixing for 1 year and negotiating, they're saving $7,000 or almost 1%. It's 0.86%. Which is fantastic. So it might take a 5-minute phone call to your broker or to your bank, but it's a real good way to actually save a little bit on that. And yeah, it's really, in this case for this investor, $7,000 money for jam. It's the easiest money they'll ever make, and you should be doing the same. The next thing we can look at is, should you spread your risk? If you put all your loans onto 1 year fixed, there's a problem in a year's time if interest rates have gone up that you could be paying an awful lot more interest than that. So if you're a bit more conservative, what we look at doing is spreading a third, a third, a third. So a third short term, a third medium term, and a third long term. If you're a bit more aggressive, you might put 2/3 or something in the short term, but I'd still suggest having some in the sort of medium to long term to protect you, because sooner or later interest rates will go up. The thing is, we don't know when, but yeah, getting something like a 5-year rate just gives you a bit of protection. So in this example, when we were looking at it, the 5-year rate was quite expensive, so we went with the 3-year rate instead. Since then, the 5-year rate has actually come down, so you might look at more getting a 5-year rate in there. But what we've done here is split up the same, a third, a third, a third, the 300,000, and we've said, right, the first one we're going to go 1 year fixed, 4.85%, really take advantage of that good rate. The second third, we're going to go 5.09% for 2 years to get a little bit of medium-term protection. We know at least for the next 2 years, we're going to get 5.09%. And the last third, we've gone for 3 years at 5.5% to give you a bit more long-term protection. Like I said, if you can get a 5-year rate under 6%, I'd really be sort of looking at that for my last third to give you some protection. When we used to be floating, we were paying 51,000 of interest. Now doing a third, a third, a third and spreading it over those terms, we're now still saving 5,000 of interest. We're bringing our average rate down to 5.15% and saving, just over 0.5% in interest. So even by being a bit more conservative, spreading your risk, we can actually save about 5,000 in interest and give you great protection at the same time.